Hey, I know you'll fall asleep soon, so before that, I'd appreciate it if you like the video and subscribe, and also let me know what time it is where you're at. Now, our stories begin. Sleep well. The Bell Witch, Haunting. In the quiet hills of Adams, Tennessee, the Bell family thought they had found peace. Their farm, nestled near the Red River in the early 1800s, was isolated but prosperous. John Bell, the family patriarch, was a respected man, hard-working, deeply religious, and proud of the life he'd built. But in 1817, something began to disturb the calm. It started with faint knocking outside the house, then scratching on the walls. At first, the Bells believed it was animals, perhaps rats in the walls or wind against the wood, but the sounds grew louder, more deliberate. Night after night, they heard footsteps pacing the halls, even when no one was there. Soon, the family began to hear a voice. It was distant at first, whispering, then clearer. It mimicked scripture, repeated prayers, and sang hymns. The voice spoke with intelligence and purpose, and it didn't take long for it to turn cruel. The entity, which they came to call the Bell Witch, focused much of its torment on young Betsy Bell, John's daughter. She was pulled from her bed at night, slapped by unseen hands, and left with red marks on her face. The family watched in helpless silence as something invisible attacked her, relentlessly. John Bell, too, became a target. His health began to fail. He experienced trembling spells and lost the ability to speak for days at a time. The voice mocked him, calling him names, vowing to end him. It referred to him only as Old Jack Bell and spoke of his death long before it happened. Word spread quickly through the region. Neighbors came to see for themselves. Ministers, skeptics, and even curious strangers witnessed the phenomena. Some were convinced they heard the voice. Others saw furniture move or felt their clothing tugged by unseen forces. One visitor claimed the witch revealed secrets only he and his wife knew. Over time, the voice grew bolder. It began to speak clearly, claiming to be Kate, the spirit of a woman wronged by John Bell. But other times, it gave different answers. A spirit of someone unburied, a traveler lost, a demon. It changed depending on who asked, never settling on a single truth. By 1820, John Bell was in steady decline. The voice grew quieter in the weeks before his death, but not absent. On the morning of his passing, a strange vial was found in his cabinet. No one knew what it was. When a drop was given to the family cat, it died instantly. The voice declared it had poisoned him. His funeral was interrupted by laughter. The voice, gleeful and unrepentant, sang drunken songs from the trees. After Bell's death, the activity slowed, but it didn't end. The witch promised to return. In 1828, the family reported a brief resurgence of sounds and whispers, and then silence. To this day, many believe the Bell Witch never truly left. The land where the Bell home once stood is quiet now. The house is gone, but a nearby cave, now called the Bell Witch Cave, remains. Some claim to feel watched when they enter. Others hear faint voices echoing from the stone. Skeptics dismiss the stories, calling them folklore, stretched by time and fear. But for those who believe, the Bell Witch is more than legend. It is a reminder that some things refuse to rest, that a voice, once awakened, can linger in the air, waiting, and sometimes it speaks only when you're alone. The Jameson family disappearance. In early October 2009, the Jameson family, Bobby, Sherilyn, and their 6-year-old daughter, Madison, set out on a short trip into the remote hills of southeastern Oklahoma. They were supposedly scouting land near Red Oak, looking to purchase a few acres where they could live off the grid. It was a quiet escape they had talked about for months. They never returned. Their white pickup truck was discovered days later, abandoned on a dirt road deep in the forested Latimer County mountains. It was locked. Inside, investigators found their coats, wallets, phones, and even Sherilyn's purse. The family's beloved dog, Maisie, was still in the truck, malnourished, but alive. Then came the most unsettling discovery. Over $30,000 in cash, hidden in a bank bag under the driver's seat. No one knew why it was there. There were no signs of a struggle, no tracks leading away, no blood, no note. Just a parked truck in the middle of nowhere, with all signs of life frozen in time. Investigators began pulling at every thread. Security footage from the family's home in Eufaula showed Bobby and Sherilyn in the days before they vanished, loading their truck in silence. They moved back and forth mechanically, rarely speaking or acknowledging each other. Madison stood nearby, equally quiet. The footage felt eerie, unnatural. Some called it zombie-like. Theories quickly began to swirl. Some believed the couple was involved in drugs. The large amount of cash hinted at something illegal, and both had reportedly lost weight and grown erratic in recent months. Others thought they were being followed or were running from something or someone. Sherilyn had once claimed their home was haunted. She wrote in her diary about seeing dark figures at night. Bobby had spoken of feeling cursed. Then there was the strange letter found in the truck. Handwritten by Sherilyn, it was angry and emotional. She expressed deep frustration toward Bobby. Some wondered if the trip had ended in a family dispute gone horribly wrong. But no weapons were found, no bodies, no clues. For 4 years, the case went cold. Then, in November 2013, 2 hunters stumbled upon skeletal remains less than 3 miles from where the truck had been found. The bones were scattered in a wooded area, partially hidden by brush. Forensic testing confirmed the worst. They belonged to Bobby, Sherilyn, and Madison. But even that discovery brought no answers. The cause of death could not be determined. The remains were too decomposed. There were no obvious signs of trauma, no explanation for why the family would have left their truck behind and wandered so far into the forest without supplies, proper clothing, or even a reason. Authorities considered foul play, a murder-suicide, an accident, but none of it fit. How did a family vanish in broad daylight without being seen? Why leave behind everything, including money and essentials? What forced them deeper into the woods? And why did they all die together in silence? Some believe the family had fallen victim to something human, perhaps someone they trusted, or someone waiting in the trees. Others remained convinced that whatever happened wasn't entirely of this world. The land where they were found remains quiet. Forgotten by most, it sits on the edge of dense wilderness, untouched and overgrown. No memorial marks the place, just trees, wind, and the long silence of something that was never supposed to happen. The Jameson case remains open, unsolved. No one has ever been charged. No final conclusion has been made. And maybe that's the most disturbing part. They were a family of 3, looking for a fresh start. What they found instead was something that left no trace, no warning, and no way back. The Aokigahara Forest. At the foot of Mount Fuji in Japan lies a forest unlike any other. Known as Aokigahara, often called the Sea of Trees, It stretches over 30 square kilometers of dense volcanic landscape. Inside, sound fades. The trees grow close together, and thick moss carpets the forest floor. Even in daylight, shadows settle deep. The forest is quiet. Too quiet. For centuries, Aokigahara has carried an unsettling reputation. In Japanese folklore, it was said to be haunted by yurei, restless spirits of those who died in sorrow or violence. But in modern times, it's known for something more tragic. It has become one of the most common sites for suicides in the world. The association began to grow in the late 20th century. Some believe it was influenced by literature, most notably a 1960 novel titled Tower of Waves, in which two lovers end their lives within the forest. Others point to economics and societal pressures in Japan, where mental health often goes unspoken. Whatever the reason, the numbers grew. Year after year, search parties found bodies in the woods, some only days gone, others left undisturbed for much longer. In response, officials posted signs at trailheads, urging visitors to reconsider, encouraging them to think of their families, to seek help. Volunteers and police quietly patrol the area. Some carry tape or string to mark their path, as many who enter intending not to return do the same. Tents, notes, clothing, and other personal items are often found deep within the trees. Not all stories reach the public. Many are kept private out of respect. But the atmosphere within Aokigahara is hard to ignore. Even for those without dark intentions, the forest is disorienting. Compasses can behave erratically due to the high iron content in the volcanic soil. Trails twist and vanish. There are few landmarks, and sound is absorbed by the dense vegetation. Some hikers report strange sensations, feelings of being watched, sudden waves of despair, or a deep sense of unease. Local legends continue. Some say the forest is cursed. Others believe that the sorrow left behind by so many lingers, changing the air, distorting time. It is not uncommon for travelers to speak of hearing voices or footsteps where no one is seen. While skeptics dismiss such claims, those who work in or near Aokigahara rarely speak lightly of it. In 2004 alone, over 100 people were reported to have attempted suicide in the forest. That number was higher in the years that followed, until officials stopped releasing the statistics, hoping that less attention would mean fewer visitors with dark intentions. Despite its reputation, Aokigahara remains open. Hikers and tourists still visit, drawn by its natural beauty, its lava caves, and views of Mount Fuji. But there are areas deeper in the woods where few choose to go, places where even birds seem silent, and in those quiet parts of the forest, the feeling of being alone never quite feels complete. No one can say exactly why Aokigahara became what it is, but the truth is that the forest does not take lives. It only receives them. It listens. It holds onto what others have left behind. And for those who believe in such things, it never forgets. The Hinterkaifeck murders in March 1922 on a remote farmstead in Bavaria, Germany. Something terrible happened. The property was called Hinterkaifeck, a small, isolated farm about 70 kilometers north of Munich. It was home to 6 people: Andreas Gruber, his wife Cecilia, their widowed daughter Victoria, her 2 children, and the family maid. They lived quietly until they didn't. Days before the tragedy, Andreas began to notice strange things. Footprints in the snow led from the woods to the house, but none led back. Keys had gone missing. A newspaper appeared on the porch that no one in the family had bought. At night, Andreas claimed He heard footsteps in the attic. When he searched, he found nothing. On March 31st, the family vanished. Neighbors began to grow concerned when no one had been seen in several days. The Grubers missed church. Victoria's daughter didn't show up for school. The mail began to pile up. On April 4th, locals decided to investigate. What they found shocked the entire region. 4 bodies, Andreas, Kazilia, Victoria, and young Kazilia, were discovered stacked in the barn, partially covered with hay. Inside the house, the maid and the baby, Josef, were found dead in their rooms. All had been killed with the same weapon, likely a mattock, a tool similar to a pickaxe, but the details were stranger still. Whoever had committed the murders had stayed. Food had been eaten, fires had been lit, the cattle had been fed, bread had been recently baked. The farm had continued operating, while 6 people lay dead only feet away. It was as if the killer had lived there for days, quietly moving through the house as if nothing had happened. Investigators were baffled. The family had no known enemies. The crime seemed personal, but the evidence was thin. No valuables were taken. No clear motive emerged. Hundreds of people were questioned in the months that followed. Suspects came and went, but no one was ever charged. The murders were brutal, but what disturbed people most was the waiting, the silence. The idea that someone may have lived in the attic for days or even weeks before the crime, watching the family, listening, preparing. The original maid had quit 6 months earlier, claiming the house felt haunted. She had heard footsteps in the attic and voices in the walls. Her fears were dismissed until they weren't. Years later, the farmhouse was demolished. During the teardown, workers discovered a hidden space in the attic with a clear view of the family's living quarters below. Whoever had been up there could have seen everything. Today, the Hinterkaifeck murders remain one of Germany's most infamous unsolved crimes. The case has never been closed. No murder weapon was ever found. No confession ever came. Just an old farmhouse, deep in the woods, where silence once turned into something much worse. The disappearance of Lars Mittank. In June 2014, 28-year-old Lars Mittank flew from Germany to Varna, a resort town on the Bulgarian coast, with a group of friends. By all accounts, it was an ordinary summer trip. Sun, sea, and football. Lars was quiet, but friendly. A healthy young man with no history of mental illness or erratic behavior. Until something changed. On June 30th, during a night out, Lars got into a minor altercation, possibly over football team rivalries. He reportedly suffered a ruptured eardrum. A local doctor advised him not to fly until it healed and prescribed antibiotics. His friends offered to stay, but Lars insisted they return to Germany without him. He booked a room at a cheap hotel in Varna and stayed behind alone. That was the last time his friends saw him. Over the next few days, Lars's behavior grew increasingly strange. He called his mother several times, sounding anxious and paranoid. He whispered that people were following him, that he needed to be careful. He asked her to cancel his credit cards. In one call, he said he was hiding and didn't feel safe. There were no signs of anyone actually pursuing him. On July 8th, Lars visited the airport to finally return home. Security cameras show him arriving calmly, carrying his bag. He spoke briefly with the airport doctor, who noted that Lars seemed nervous. Partway through the exam, Lars abruptly stood up and muttered something about not wanting to die. Then, without warning, he ran out of the airport terminal, leaving all his belongings behind. Surveillance footage captures his final known moments. Lars sprints out of the airport, dashes across the parking lot, climbs over a tall fence, and disappears into a wooded area bordering the property. He has never been seen since. Search efforts began immediately. Police combed the surrounding forests. Drones and dogs were brought in. Lars's face appeared on posters across Bulgaria and Germany. His mother traveled to Varna, speaking to media and investigators, but no body was found, no trace, no confirmed sightings. Theories soon began to circulate. Some believe Lars may have suffered a psychotic break, brought on by trauma, medication, or stress. Others point to possible foul play, that he may have been involved in something unknown or targeted for reasons that remain unclear. His mother insists he was not mentally ill and that his fear during those final days was real. The case gained international attention largely due to the haunting nature of the surveillance footage. A young man, seemingly in distress, fleeing something no one else could see. His passport, wallet, and luggage were left behind, suggesting he had not planned to disappear voluntarily. But after that moment on the cameras, there is nothing. The area where Lars ran was searched extensively. Local authorities have never ruled out the possibility that he perished in the forest, but no physical evidence supports it. Some speculate he may have suffered head trauma earlier than reported. Others believe the antibiotics he was prescribed could have interacted with an unknown condition, causing disorientation or paranoia. There are also stranger theories, claims of organ trafficking, secret surveillance, or encounters with people he shouldn't have trusted. None have been proven. Years have passed. His bank accounts remain untouched. His passport has not been used. There have been no confirmed sightings, only unverified tips and blurry images from across Europe. His mother continues to search, holding on to the possibility that he may still be alive, suffering from memory loss or living under a different identity. But with no new leads, the case has grown cold. The disappearance of Lars Mittank remains one of the most mysterious missing persons cases in modern Europe. There is no clear motive, no confirmed crime, and no resolution. Only the image of a man running, terrified, alone, into silence. The Springfield Three. On the morning of June 7th, 1992, in the quiet city of Springfield, Missouri, 3 women vanished without a trace. There was no break-in, no signs of struggle, just an empty house, and a mystery that remains unsolved decades later. The night before, 19-year-old Suzanne Streeter and her best friend, Stacy McCall, had just graduated from high school. After attending several graduation parties, the 2 girls decided to spend the night at Suzanne's house instead of a friend's, hoping for a quieter end to the long day. Suzanne's mother, 47-year-old Cheryl Levitt, was already home. She'd spent the evening working as a hairdresser and had called a friend around 11 p.m. Nothing unusual was reported during the call. The 3 women were expected to be there that morning. They weren't. When friends arrived the next day, the house was quiet. All 3 women's personal belongings were still there: purses, keys, clothes. The front door was unlocked. A glass lampshade on the porch light was broken, but that was the only sign anything might be wrong. Inside, the beds appeared to have been slept in. The family dog was nervous, but unharmed. Initially, no one assumed the worst. Maybe they'd gone out. Maybe they overslept. But as the hours passed, it became clear. None of the women had left willingly. Family members and friends visited throughout the day, some tidying up the home in an attempt to help. A voicemail message was accidentally erased. It was never recovered, and to this day, no one knows what it said, or if it was important. Police were eventually called, and the home was examined more closely. Still, nothing pointed to where they had gone, or why. No fingerprints, no witnesses, no evidence of a break-in. Just 3 people, gone. The story became national news. Flyers were posted. Billboards went up. Tips poured in. But every lead came to a dead end. Over the years, several theories have been explored. One suggests the women may have been abducted by someone they knew, possibly while preparing for bed. Another speculates that someone lured them outside late at night, but there were no signs of forced entry, and no one in the neighborhood reported hearing or seeing anything unusual. One man, already serving time for unrelated crimes, claimed he knew where the bodies were buried, beneath a hospital parking structure that hadn't been built at the time of the disappearance. Ground-penetrating radar later detected disturbed soil beneath the concrete, but authorities declined to dig, citing a lack of credible evidence and the enormous cost of excavation. The families have never given up. Cheryl's and Suzanne's loved ones continued to hold out hope for answers. Stacy's mother became an advocate for missing persons and frequently appeared in media interviews, keeping attention on the case. To this day, no one has been arrested, no bodies have been found, no confirmed trace of Suzanne, Stacy, or Cheryl has ever resurfaced. The case has come to be known as the Springfield Three. 3 women, 1 house, and a silence that has lasted more than 3 decades. Despite advances in technology, new DNA methods, and digital databases, the investigation remains open. Cold case detectives still revisit the evidence, hoping that time and progress will reveal something that was once missed. But for now, the mystery remains. No suspects, no answers, just a lingering question. How can 3 people simply vanish from their home without leaving a single trace? The Circleville Letters. In 1976, residents of the small town of Circleville, Ohio, began receiving anonymous letters. They were handwritten, postmarked from nearby Columbus, and always unsigned. At first, they seemed strange, odd accusations and warnings directed at people around town. Then the letters turned threatening. One of the first targets was Mary Gillespie, a local school bus driver. The anonymous writer claimed she was having an affair with the school superintendent and warned her to end it. Mary denied the accusation, but the letters kept coming. They were specific. They mentioned places she'd been and details no stranger should know. Soon, Mary's husband Ron received a letter too. It warned him to stop the affair or face consequences. Weeks later, Ron was found dead. His pickup truck crashed into a tree not far from their home. Authorities ruled it an accident, but the circumstances were odd. Ron had been drinking, but friends said he was a careful driver. A gun was found fired once, though no one could say why. After Ron's death, the letters multiplied. Other residents began receiving them. Teachers, city officials, neighbors. The writer seemed to know secrets, things that hadn't been made public. Some letters accused people of embezzlement. Others suggested abuse. They always demanded action, and they always made threats. Then came the signs. Large, handmade signs appeared along Mary Gillespie's bus route, taunting her, mentioning her daughter. One day in 1983, after years of harassment, Mary pulled over to remove one. Behind the sign, she discovered a crude box rigged with string. Inside was a small pistol, set up as a booby trap. Had she pulled the sign a different way, the gun may have fired. Police traced the weapon back to Paul Freshaw, Mary's former brother-in-law. He denied involvement, but was arrested, tried, and convicted of attempted murder. He was sentenced to 7 years in prison. But the letters didn't stop. Even while Paul was behind bars, more letters were sent, hundreds of them. Some were mailed to reporters, others to law enforcement. Paul himself received them in prison. Officials claimed he was still behind it, writing and smuggling the letters out. But he was held in solitary for stretches, with no access to writing materials or visitors. Still, the letters came. When Paul was released, after serving nearly a decade, he maintained his innocence. He appeared on national television in the 1990s, pleading for the case to be reopened. But no new evidence was found. The writer was never caught. Then, without warning, the letters stopped. After nearly 2 decades of taunting, accusations, and fear, the town of Circleville fell silent. No more letters arrived. No confessions were made. The writer, whoever they were, disappeared, leaving behind a mystery that has never been solved. Over 1,000 letters were sent in total. All were postmarked locally. All were handwritten in the same blocky style. Forensic examiners studied the handwriting, but no match was ever confirmed. Some believed there were multiple writers. Others thought it was one person with access to private information. To this day, no one knows who wrote the Circleville letters or why. What's most unsettling isn't just the content of the letters, but how much the writer seemed to know. Secret affairs, financial dealings, personal histories. They wrote with confidence, and the fear they created changed lives. In a town as small as Circleville, people began to wonder, was it a neighbor, a co-worker, a family member? The sense of trust was gone, and the questions still linger. Who wrote the letters? Why did they stop? And how close were they to the people they threatened? Circleville never got its answers. Only a trail of envelopes, fear, and silence that stretched for nearly 20 years. We've come to an end of our stories. If you enjoyed listening, do subscribe, and if you want to be alerted when a new story is uploaded, hit the notification bell. Take care.